What is a woman? We hear this question a lot from gender critical folks. They're always asking this because they hope that somebody who on the receiving end of the question can't answer it, and they stumble upon the words and they get confused and lost. And so the gender critical guy's like, yeah, aha, look how ridiculous they look. I win, right? It's kind of like a gotcha thing. It's very disingenuous. So let's clear this up for people, hopefully clear it up for both sides. So what's a woman? Well, under current gender theory, a woman is a gender identity that aligns with a female archetype or female typical traits. Now, I know the first thing people are going to, I already see the comments already. The first thing you guys are going to want to say is, no, Mike, you're wrong. Woman's an adult human female. But the first thing you have to understand is that definitions aren't objectively right or wrong. They're just words. And definitions, depending on their context, can be used no matter what the word is, no matter what the definition is. If we agree upon the definition, you can use it in any context that we agree upon. So saying, your definition is wrong makes no sense. However, I can say that my definition provides more utility and provides more clarity when we use it the way I do in the context of modern society versus the outdated version, right? The adult human female, that's the outdated version of the word. So let me explain why this is the case. All right, so we define a woman as a gender identity that aligns with female typical traits. Okay, what are the female typical traits, right? They're psychological, they're behavioral, social. There's encapsulates all these different aspects of gender. Self-perception as well, right? It encapsulates the perception of the self in contrast with modern society. So these are all the traits that are indexed to femininity, things like that, female typical traits. This far better encapsulates the psychological and the neurobiological nuance that comes with gender. Because we're finding that gender is more than just what your genitalia is or what your chromosomes or gametes are. It has to do more with your psychology, the way you think, the way you perceive yourself. These are, the very internal senses that you can't visibly see from the outside. And we're finding that gender has neurobiological roots. There are certain brain structures that give rise to different brain phenotypes. Because there's a spectrum of these brain phenotypes, and there's tons of studies on this showing that there are different brain phenotypes that give rise to different gender identities. Well, because there's a spectrum of brain phenotypes, it's easy to see that there would be a spectrum of genders. So we have to take notice of the fact that gender is a bit more complicated than just what kind of genitals you have or what kind of chromosomes you have. It has to do a lot with psychology, neurobiology, things that require a bit of intellectual effort to understand. Gender at its heart is a neurobiological phenomenon. That's what drives gender identity. So reducing it down to something as trivial as, what genitalia you have or what chromosomes you have, it doesn't capture gender with that same resolution that my definition can capture it with. Like, okay, a woman is an adult human female. Okay, what's a female? Well, that's to do with your genitalia. Well, okay, well, if we remove those genitalia, does that mean that you're no longer the gender you are? Well, it has to do with your chromosomes. Okay, well, how about intersex people? Well, okay, it has to do with your ability to produce gametes. Okay, so 1,000 years ago, when people didn't know about gametes, how would they decide if you're a woman or not? They couldn't. What do you do then? So hopefully now it's a bit more clear why we make these distinctions between gender and sex. And we don't just base gender off of your reproductive system. Because of the nuances and the complexity of the human psychology, the human brain, and all these factors. So, for example, I consider myself a man, and it's not because of my genitals, but because of the fact that I have thought processes and my brain is wired to think and perceive myself as a man in contrast with modern society, right? I like to do manly things. Typical manly things, right? So I fit the category of man because I align with those male typical traits. My brain is masculinized in such a way that it renders my perception and my identity as a man. In the same exact sense, a trans woman is a woman because her brain phenotype is configured in such a way that it gives rise to a female typical kind of identity and self-perception in contrast with modern society, right? So their gender aligns with the female typical traits, so hence they are a woman. It's that simple, and my definition accounts for all these nuances that we are learning about in psychology, gender dysphoria, right? All these things about the human brain, the neurobiology, the hypothalamus structures, like white matter, the gray matter, the cortical thickness, all these things that we're finding correlations between brain structure and gender identity. And there's thousands of studies on this showing this. My definition better accounts for these things. It has far more utility and better usages in our society. Suggesting it's an adult human female misses out on all that clarity. Now, some clever gender critical folks will suggest that my definition can't make sense because I can't distinguish between a man and a woman, right? Because if I say a woman has female typical traits like nurturing, right? They wear dresses, makeup. Well, men can do that. Men can wear dresses. Men can wear makeup. So, you can't distinguish the two. Therefore, my definition's better. Well, this provokes a discussion in the philosophy of language, where you're suggesting, you're essentially question begging a particular notion of language, in which definitions are strict and they contain exclusive properties that cannot be shared with another object. Well, that doesn't have to be the case, right? This is called essentialism in philosophy of language. And I take a more anti-essentialist approach to this because there's many issues with that kind of essentialist position. I mean, it's too simplistic. For example, how do you distinguish between a truck and a car? Obviously, we understand that there are distinctions. We can make distinctions between trucks and cars. Okay, so what's the distinction? Well, trucks are bigger than cars, but there are some cars that are bigger than trucks. Now what? Well, trucks have beds. Cars don't. Well, there are some cars that have beds. The El Camino, the Subaru Baja. Well, trucks can tow things. Cars can't tow things. But some cars can tow things, right? There's no one trait that's exclusive to trucks and that cannot be shared with cars. It doesn't exist, right? But we can still make distinctions. And this requires an understanding of a certain categorization theory in linguistics called prototype theory, in which there is no strict definition behind things. We have only degrees of belonging to certain categories. There's only degrees of belonging. And we put things in different categories based off of standout traits, typical traits, right? We lean towards certain categories. There's no such thing as only fitting in one and does not share any commonalities with any other category. There's an inherent fuzziness to words and definitions, especially in the case of gender. And that's why my definition far better encapsulates all this and captures all this. And the adult human female doesn't. So there you go. Hope this helped you, and I hope you recognize now why we have to add the nuance. We have to have these kinds of philosophical discussions when we talk about words and language and how we use it and gender and the science behind it. Right? These are important things to talk about, and just dismissing all this. So, oh no, it's simple, man and female. That's it. That misses out on so much nuance and so much understanding, rich understanding of the world around you and people around you. It's far better to use to update our definitions, and it's okay to update definitions, and that's what words are here for. They're just used by us, and they're not here to be objective.